Today we've got a city cam report and testimony from a blood expert in the Steele murder trial. And a 90-foot stack comes tumbling down at the old arena. In sports, Jim has a landmark decision in baseball. Dick checks weather toward the weekend.
Emmy Award-winning City Camera News is next with those stories and a report tonight from Bob Franken and the chewing out of the Cleveland School Board. We are Television 8, WJW TV, Cleveland. From Television 8 in Cleveland, this is City Camera News with Jim Hale, Jeff Maynard, Jim Mueller, and Dick Goddard.
Good evening. It was a real SOS at the Blue Water Seafood Company in Brook Park. 30 plant employees were taken to hospitals when they were overcome by what seemed to be carbon monoxide fumes. The workers were taken to hospitals, most of them treated and released. Kathy Bibbins was one of the first to get sick.
About 2 minutes after I got there, I just started getting like I was running and running. I was so tired and I couldn't breathe. And so about 7:45, I took an aspirin. I got a real bad headache, and I took aspirins. And I come back, and I sat down, and I got real dizzy. And the girl in front of me, she caught me, and they made me put my legs between my knees. And
Your head between your knees?
Yeah, my head between my knees. And then they just carried me out. A foreman carried me out.
What about the other employees that you were working on the line with?
About 2 minutes later, a couple more girls come into the infirmary, and then they just said they just started passing out on the line. People was falling off of their chairs and everything.
Now, tests show some of the people did have carbon monoxide in their blood, but company officials say testing devices inside the plant showed no dangerous levels of carbon monoxide in the air. Now, Blue Water has that testing equipment because people have become sick from carbon monoxide fumes here before. Through the day, the air cleared. People were back to work on the afternoon shift. Also in Brook Park, some city employees are still not working, and Jim has that. On one side of the dispute in Brook Park are the striking service workers and dissident firemen and policemen. On the other side, the city council members. And at issue is money. The service workers, who among other things collect garbage, have been off the job a week. Trash in the community is piling up at the rate of 60 tons a day. The service workers contend the council has reneged on agreed-to contract provisions. The safety forces, meanwhile, are still deciding whether or not to begin their own strike. They say that Mayor Angelo Guido okayed an 8.8% pay hike, but council later ruled that excessive. Separate meetings were to be held today. Well, in Ashtabula, striking teachers and other school employees are still walking picket lines in spite of a court order to get back to work. That strike is 1 week old now, and right now the two sides there are getting together for a court-ordered negotiating session that is open to the public. That meeting's at the Ashtabula School Kitchen Center. Here in the city, about 6 employees of the financially troubled Muni Light plant will very soon be off the job, but not by choice. The plant is getting out of the power generating business and switching to only a distribution system. And thusly, 57 workers very soon will be getting pink slips. Some will be offered jobs in other city departments. For the rest, though, it's tough luck. Around Muni Light today, we found some gripes on the way the firings have been handled.
I could have appreciated it, being the first to know because of my situation, my status.
Yeah, it bothers me that we got to work day by day. Like on a humble, I mean, that always bothers me. Can't go do nothing.
You know, we're just hanging. We don't know what's going to happen yet. They won't come out here and tell us exactly what's going on.
There were also complaints that the workers found out they were being fired from reports in the news media. Well, it looks like all systems are go for the Perry nuclear power plant. The Nuclear Regulatory Commission says all safety-related standards have been met. And within 2 months, the commission is expected to have a decision on granting full construction permits for the plant, which could be in operation, turning out atomic power in 5 years. Well, it was progress of a different kind at the old arena building on Euclid downtown today. The demolition of the once-renowned Sports Palace is right on schedule, and crane operator Fred Dunlap was right on target with his 6,000-pound wrecking ball. The 90-foot tower here was part of the ammonia system for the ice house, and it probably took weeks to build. It took about 10 minutes today to level. The total teardown job here should be completed in another couple of months. We've been told that almost everything is being salvaged. Up next, we've got updates on the Steele and Leach trials. And a stormy day in court on school desegregation. A murder trial of former Judge Robert Steele and the Kilbane brothers for plotting the murder of Steele's wife Marlene shifted its focus today from the defendants to the testimony of a prosecution witness, an expert on blood. And City Camera's Jim Cox is here with a report.
For 37 years in the coroner's office, Mary Cowan has been examining the aftermath of violence. Blood, fragments of bullets, bits of clothing, particles of hair, anything that might be evidence of a crime. Ms. Cowan testified about examining the body of Marlene Steele at the morgue a few hours after Mrs. Steele was murdered while asleep at home. Also about what she found at the Steele home the next day. She said tests showed Mrs. Steele was shot twice in the head from a distance of between 1 and 2 feet. The explosive force of the bullet splattered blood as far away as 7.5 feet from the body. What may be more critical as evidence, however, is the blood that remained on the body. The prosecution contends that it will show Robert Steele told police that when he rushed into the bedroom, he shook his wife, trying to determine if she was still alive. Ms. Cowan's expert testimony, however, was that if the body had been pushed or shoved, the flow of the still wet blood would have been distorted. Ms. Cowan said there was no distortion of the blood flow. Tomorrow, more testimony about the relationship between the former Judge Steele and Mrs. Barbara Schwartz, whom he married 3 months after his first wife's murder. Jim?
Thank you, Jim. In another Cleveland courtroom today, Ashby Leach was given permission to act as one of his co-counsels. The Vietnam vet is charged with kidnapping and extortion stemming from his takeover of the Chessie headquarters in Terminal Tower last August. Also today, an appeals court has partially lifted the gag order issued by Judge Eugene Sawicki, who is hearing the Leach case. Because of the legal maneuvering in the trial, which opened this past Monday, a jury has yet to be seated to hear the evidence for and against Ashby Leach. City Camera reporter Bob Franken told us last night to look for fireworks in another courtroom today at an important hearing on city school desegregation. And from the federal courthouse, Bob reports it happened that way.
We'd expected some tough talk here today, but the legal battle in the federal courthouse over school desegregation in Cleveland escalated this afternoon. As the hearing began, the NAACP pulled a surprise and filed a motion asking that Cleveland School Superintendent Paul Briggs and all but one board member face charges of contempt of court at a hearing 1 week from today. There were strenuous arguments from the lawyers, but the strongest comments came from Judge Battisti, who gave what has to be called a tongue-lashing to the Cleveland school board members he'd ordered into court. Repeatedly, he accused the board of trying to, quote, undermine the court's desegregation ruling, in what he called an attempt to intentionally manipulate the people's emotions. Further conduct like that, he concluded, would result in contempt citations, in his words, surely and swiftly. Then Judge Battisti abruptly adjourned, and it became clear afterwards his anger was not lost on school officials. Mr. Sweeney, will you talk to us, please?
No comment.
No comment? Dr. Briggs, will you talk to us, please, and give us your comment? Why won't you comment, sir? Are you afraid to make any public comment right now?
I really am.
As for the motion for the contempt of court hearing, Judge Battisti failed to rule on that. It is still pending, and maybe that's why the school board members were so reluctant to say anything. This is Bob Franken, City Camera News at the Federal Courthouse.
And it is time again to meet a Thursday's child who, according to the old saying, has far to go. A youngster with lots of love, but no home. This evening, Jim Finnerty introduces us to Michael, a Thursday's child.
When I asked Michael if he'd rather pitch or catch, he said pitch. If you miss the ball, you have to chase it. Well, I did talk him into catching later, but Michael impressed me as a boy who knows his own mind. One of 4 children, Michael came into county care when both of his parents died. Since then, he's had several placements, the latest on a farm, where Michael is an integral part of his foster family. In fact, when we sat down to talk, that was all Michael wanted to talk about, especially how he takes care of the calves.
I take care of 9 calves, and some cows in some pens, and some calves in pen that they don't get any more milk. So, and I help feed them, and I help get them in.
What's the best part?
Help getting cows in.
You like to round them up,
Yeah, you get them in their stanchions.
and then you milk them.
No, yeah. First you give them their hay, and then you milk them.
We found Michael to be a bright, intelligent young man, but he's a young man who needs a real family.